Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of TEPSA Presents. I'm your host, Todd Nesloni, the Director of Culture and Strategic Leadership here at the Texas Elementary Principals and Supervisors Association. I'm so excited to introduce to all the TEPSA members and non-members alike my special guest today, who is Hedreich. Hedreich, thank you so much for being here. Tell everybody kind of who you are.
Well, the short version is I'm an author, an educator, and a mom, of course, ed tech curriculum and instructional specialist for my school, and host of the YouTube and podcast Small Bites, which is a quick 5-minute, give you some strategies to help you build better relationships and get better outcomes at your campuses and schools.
I love it. And you're also based here in Texas, right?
Yes, I am here in DFW.
Now, how long have you been in Texas?
I am a Texan originally by birth. I'm from Houston. I lived kind of a lot of different places. In my first life, I was a musician, so I lived in a few places. Lived overseas in Switzerland for about 15 years and repatriated in 11. So I'm back home.
So tell me, you mentioned being a musician and having all these other passions. What ended up leading you to education?
You know what? I've always had a finger in education. In high school, I took something called Service and Exploration Education, where half day as a senior, or I don't know, I think it was 2 periods, whatever. We went to elementary school and we worked as TAs. And so I did that, and I was always a part of, when I did musical theater, when they were cultural envoys going to schools, I was always a part of those groups. I loved doing that. And then when I got to Switzerland, I began teaching music there in the school system, and taught that as well as performed. And that's just always been a great part of what I do. I've always done, for a long time, not always, done adult education classes where I teach culture through music. You know, a lot of times when we talk about the enslavement experience in America, we don't realize that all modern art forms are born out of that experience. That's one thing we really don't highlight. If you go back, there was European music, there was classical music, and there were different kinds of folk music, and the Afro rhythms, that syncopation is kind of what makes rock and roll and rock and soul and funk. That's what drives those art forms. So that's kind of how I got into that. And of course that bridged on into what I do now.
So I love so much of your work. And when we were planning master classes and you agreed to do one, I was so excited because anybody who signs up for your masterclass, I know not only do you bring like all the energy and all the fun and excitement and the genuineness of who you are, but you bring some really good meat. And so your topic is called Who's Missing? And for those listening, master classes are something you can sign up for when you register for your summer conference. You can sign up for a master class, which is a deep dive into a particular topic with a few of our specialists in the area. We've got 6 of them this year, and Hedreich, you're leading one of them. It's called Who's Missing? So tell me a little bit about when we asked you to do a master class, and when you think about all the work you do. I love the work you do highlighting diverse populations and really just making sure that, sometimes when we start talking about this diversity, it can be something that some people are scared of. It can sound really controversial, especially in the world we live in today. I know this has become a topic that especially educators and administrators in Texas have started to kind of veer a little bit back from because they're nervous of backlash. And I love that what you're going to do with this masterclass is take it from that perspective of let's bring it in right. Let's make sure we educate people well on how this is going to be. So when did this become a passion of yours?
I say that a big part of my work is growing up being that one Black friend. People don't know that integration is really new. All of this is very, very, very new. So I was born in a Negro hospital, and people go, what? See, look at that face. Look at that. That's right. I was raised in a multi-generational household with my mom, my grandmom, and my great-grandmom. So I learned the movies and music and stories of Motown is all about the Black community coming of age, kind of Black pride, that thing. My grandmother, her music was jazz, but the stories that she told, those were the stories of lynchings and keep your head down, stay in your place so that you don't get in trouble as an uppity bleep. And then my great-grandmother, she was born in 1892 or 3, and there's a story behind that. I won't get into it. But the stories that she knew about slavery,
Yeah.
those were stories that she was told firsthand by people who were freed. So I knew stories that she knew, that she heard from actual, and yet I know all the TikTok dances. So people don't see that as being, you feel like the timeline is way longer, but it's not. And so when we talk about who's missing or how to where that all came from, it's because I grew up in these spaces in the first generation that really in integrated school systems in Houston, where people didn't know me. They had never been my first day at college, English 101, girl tapped me on the shoulder and goes, I never met a colored before. You know, so I'm just it's always been my passion, because
Yeah.
it's kind of like always been with me. You know, the education, no, I'd rather you not touch my hair, but thank you. You may look, you know, just always having to be that person. And on one side, it's like, oh God, really? Are we still here? And on the other side is, oh, you know what? We're still here. I can help.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of that's the long way around, but that's kind of how I got to that.
Well, and the reason I'm so excited for our members to hear from you too is because, you know, our students in the state of Texas are from a variety of backgrounds, religions, family makeups, everything. And the most powerful thing that we can do at school, I believe, is making it a place where they see themselves, where they feel like they are represented, whether it's in the books, the language, whether the posters they see on the wall. And I think that there are so many, like you've said, non-controversial ways to do it, where you just include people. And, you know, I think one of the things you talk about is being able to do that in a community-friendly way. And it doesn't have to be this abrasive, scary thing where people are going to come out with their pitchforks ready to take you down. So give me a taste of kind of what something is that people can do to kind of make sure their students are seen and heard, and do it in a way that doesn't scare off people who may have very different beliefs on the matter.
One is talk about belonging. You know, when ask your students, hey, do you feel like this room? I am a boy mom. And I made sure when I divorced, especially, I kind of like toned down the frilly, Laura Ashley flowers, Cabbage Patch roses, you know, tulle, and that's my world. And I thought, you know, this is not necessarily, it's a very feminine space. I would like to have a more neutral space. If he wants to add flowers up in his room and he wants to add some flowers, that's fine. But I want to start from a more neutral space so that he feels like he belongs here. And he was a, you know, kind of football playing boy. So it was a good decision. And that's what we think about. I think of classrooms. It influenced how I decorated my classroom, because generally classrooms are very feminine spaces, and there's swirl and color and everything's kind of swirly. Does everyone feel comfortable in those spaces? Do they feel like they belong? So talking about a sense of belonging is a really good place to start. You know, what makes you feel like you belong? I was in school where nobody at school looked like me and everybody at home looked one way. So there were like these two very different spaces that I belonged to, and then didn't feel like I belonged to either, because I was always kind of doing a split. So what are you providing? If if you have a large Spanish speaking community, you know, do you play things and then put on the Spanish? You know, if you play a YouTube video, why not put on the Spanish subtitles? Most kids have to take Spanish in school anyway. So, you know, that gives an automatic bridge. I have my kids, do you turn and talk in whatever language you feel like? That's fine. You know, that it bridges over to academically. So how do we feel like we belong or don't belong in a space? And you can do that by asking your kids. And the next thing is to ask questions. You know, a lot of times we come in and we have all of these impressions from social media, from podcasts, from newscasts, and we bring all of that with us in the classroom. Actually, I did a keynote recently where I advocated that as an educator, if you really want to make sure that all of your students they belong to you equally, that you love them equally, you accept them equally, reduce the time you spend consuming vilifying messages about the other side.
Yeah.
Because this ain't the Cowboys. My uncle and I, we fuss about that. Your team lost. Your team lost. It's not like that. You know, it's not Steelers and Cowboys. Who's America's team? there's only one team here. There's red and blue in the flag.
Yep.
And so if we don't remember, and I use this, very fine people on other sides that put a lot of people off. But if you think about it, on every side, in every country, like Sting said, I guess the Russians love their children too. We all kind of want the same things. And so if we think about that, we can make better choices about what we bring into the classroom. And then we are less likely to have folks coming after us with the pitchfork, because we are presenting a blank canvas.
Yeah.
Hey kids, what? Oh, you saw that on the news? Wow, let's look it up. Here's allsidesmedia.com, allsidesmedia.com, everybody. All Sides Media. Let's look. Okay, this is a left-leaning site. This is a right-leaning site. Let's see how they vary. Let's look at the words that they use in this headline. Let's look at the words that they use in these headlines. What do you think? Are those words neutral? If I have on a yellow sweater, that is fact. I have on a pretty yellow sweater, that's no longer fact. That's subjective. And so talking to your kids, talking them through how to look at information without you saying, see, they said that the other side was an idiot. That's just wrong. Yes, calling somebody an idiot is always wrong. And arguably, we can talk about that as being really, use your kind words. That's fact. If somebody's not using their kind words, it doesn't matter what their point is. They can say it in a different way. That is fact. But we can argue, we can talk about just if people are neutral, what is the author's purpose? We talk about that in ELA all the time. What is the author's purpose? Is it more to entertain? Is it more to persuade? If they're trying to persuade, why are they trying to persuade? Do they have a vested interest? And you start with what words are subjective with second and third and fourth graders and author's purpose, because that connects to their ELA TEKS. And then or standards if you're not from Texas. And you move on to deeper issues of what language means and how people use it to persuade and what the motives are. Because everything that's out there, there's a motive.
Yeah.
I'm making money. I'm saying this because it makes me money. I am writing this because my boss told me. I am doing this assignment because I'm passionate about this, what the teacher assigned me. All of those things have motives. So then you discuss that in 10th and 11th and 12th grade, and maybe even in middle school. What do those things mean when we read and look at information? And when you leave that with kids, you would be surprised with their own ideas. And then when they have diverse ideas, you teach them to be respectful and have conversations. So then you don't get a lot of bullying on Facebook in 10 years, because you've taught your students to disagree with one another respectfully and civilly, and to present facts and opinions in a way that doesn't vilify the other side. Plain and simple.
Well, I gotta tell you, I was like, oh my gosh, don't give away everything, because there was so much goodness in there already. And so I know those of you who are listening, you are going to be obsessed with this masterclass. So if you haven't signed up for summer conference, make sure you do that today. And if you haven't signed up for a masterclass, I think this one might be a pretty good choice, and you will be highly entertained, engaged, and leave with a ton of ideas to take back that you can use immediately. Our summer conference this year is June 8th through the 10th at the Kalahari Resort in Round Rock. Who doesn't want to go there for a couple days this summer? So thank you so much for being with us today. Where can people check you out at if they want to learn some more about you on their own?
Oh, the cool thing is you can go to hedreich.com, and from there you'll get lots and lots of wonderful links. And the cool thing is, if you see how to spell my name, Hedreich, literally it's Hedreich on Twitter, Hedreich on Facebook, Hedreich on Instagram, Hedreich on LinkedIn, Hedreich on Anchor, Hedreich on Spotify. Practical name.
They can find you if they just type it in. There we go. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Hedreich, for being here. We can't wait to learn more from you this summer and to follow you along on social media. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And what are you waiting for? Go sign up for summer conference right now.